Welcome to another episode of The Breakdown. It's been a minute since we had conversations that weren't, I don't know, about coal. March was all about coal. It's a very big, important issue, but it's not the only very big, important issue. And as we've been focusing on coal and getting back on the air, one of the things, well, there's been several things that have been happening within the disabled community. Yeah, I've said it many times before on the show. The measure of a society is how they take care of their most vulnerable. And the last couple of months, Alberta not doing so great. To find out more about that, we're having a massive panel discussion today. We're very excited to welcome multiple members from multiple stakeholder groups to speak about what the Alberta government has been doing in regards to, I'd like to say supporting the disabled community, but I really feel like at this point, and maybe I'm going to find out that I'm wrong, I don't think I am, what the Alberta government has been doing to remove supports from the disabled community, which is a bonkers statement to make in and of itself. So, with all of that said, I am very, very, very excited to welcome to the show today. We have Kavin, Leah, Mary, and Mike. I'm going to ask them all to do their own introductions in just a second, but thank you all so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
There's a little bit of audio weirdness going on because I told everybody to mute their mics unless they weren't talking, and then I surprised, now you're talking. So all of that being said, I'm going to run the room, and I'm going to let each of you explain who you are, what your situation is in all of this stuff, and then we'll get into the big meaty topics because we got 3 or 4 major topics that I want to make sure that we cover off today. So we'll go in order of the list on my screen here. So we'll start with Kavin. Kavin, if you could just take a second to introduce yourself to everybody on the show.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. So my name is actually Kavin, but spelled Kavin.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. And my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a person with disabilities and person with lots of lived experiences in other areas as well.
All right. Kavin, thank you. And I apologize again for getting your name wrong.
It's
I'll
okay.
take full ownership of that one. Next on our list, we have Leah.
Hi, my name is Leah Dormar. I am the Executive Director for the Southern Alberta Individualized Planning Association in Lethbridge, Alberta. And we were one of the agencies and the organizations that was defunded. Our contracts were ended a year early with 90 days notice. So we were a self-advocacy organization and supporting the South Region Self-Advocacy Network across Southern Alberta, as well as doing education and workshops and different self-advocacy initiatives across Southern Alberta.
Okay. Mary.
Hi, my name is Mary, and I am someone that's on AISH, and I'm also a member of the Disability Action Hall and Self-Advocacy Federation.
Excellent. Thank you. And then to round things off, we got Mike at the very end.
Hello everybody. My name is Mike Wing, and I am a person with a disability and a disability advocate. I am a member of the Health Advocacy Federation and the Disability Action Hall, which are 2 of the other disability advocacy groups that were defunded.
Okay. There we go. Now, this is going to be, I'm going to try he said cautiously, to really let you guys kind of run the conversation. One of the things that I I think I'm seeing with how the government is choosing to interact with the disabled community and the advocacy groups is that they're doing all of the talking. And so I don't want to do that. So I'm going to introduce a couple of topics, and then I'm going to ask each of you to sort of weigh in with your thoughts and your perspectives on it. Um, and the first thing that I want to talk about is the cutting of the advocacy groups. We've seen the UCP government in a variety of sectors, and I think that's important to highlight. The UCP government has sort of said, "Hey, that's a really nice grassroots organization that you've got that's helping people there." No, and there have been quite a few organizations in quite a few different sectors that have had their funding just pulled, their contracts canceled with little to no warning whatsoever. And this has some huge impacts on the people that those groups are trying to help. So that's where I want to kind of start the conversation. I'm going to start the conversation today in the same kind of order. And we'll see where we go because we have two other topics that I want to make sure that we hit on as well. So I'm going to go in reverse order from what I just did there. So Mike, if you can talk a little bit, explain to the audience what we're talking about when we're talking about the UCP and these surprise defundings.
Yeah, so in January, well, actually, let me back up a little bit. So the Disability Action Hall, HAPA, Hillshan, and the Health Advocacy Federation have been around collectively for almost 30 years. And we've worked with many governments. We've supported people with disabilities to learn how to speak up for themselves and to speak up for their rights and find resources in the community. So we've done this for 30 years, and then all of a sudden, January 2025, our funder sends us all an email saying, well, actually, we're going to cut your funding. And it was a massive shock. We actually just, the Health Advocacy Federation anyway, actually renewed their contract in November 2024 for another 3 years. And effectively in January, they said, well, sorry, actually, we're going to defund you.
Okay. One of the principles that has been brought up many times on the show when we've had conversations with members of the disabled community has been the idea, and I'm going to use the phrase, although I can't claim to be a member of the disabled community myself, but one of the main principles is nothing for us without us. And so it's, there's something inherently paternalistic, I think, in removing voices from making decisions about how support should be provided. Kavin, I'm wondering if you can talk about a little bit, what does all of this stuff mean to you? How does this impact you?
Yeah, the defunding of these advocacy groups. Yeah. So, yeah, for me personally, like recently now, my mother passed away, and me, I live alone, and if these advocacy groups get defunded, not gonna have anyone I trust to speak to when I need the help. Other places I've been to or resources from my experience are not helpful. I'm a PDD, persons with developmental disabilities client, and yeah, the services that PDD referred me to, just I'll say is a BS, not worth it.
All right. And I mean, I'm laughing because you dropped the BS in the end there. I'm not laughing at what you were saying. But I think that it's really important to highlight that because there is, you can come at a lot of different issues from a purely academic standpoint. But if you don't have the lived experience piece, then you're going to be missing out in a lot of ways that improve the ways that people can access these things. Leah, you've got a pretty big stake in the advocacy group piece. What are your thoughts?
Well, a lot of, just to repeat what Kavin and Mike had said too, January 7th, we all got emails stating that we are being given 90 days notice that our contracts will be ending. That came 15 months before our contracts were supposed to renew. I mean, being in the nonprofit world for the last, 20 years, it happens a lot where contracts get ended or, they don't get renewed. But to be given 90 days notice was not any time to be able to figure out what next steps are. When you're relying on grants and fundraising, things like that. Self-advocacy groups and what we did at SEPA, sorry, I'm gonna trip over all my words now.
No worries.
They're a space to create trust. They're a space that creates safety for people who may not have any other supports. We have also worked with individuals that don't qualify for PDD supports. And so we end up being a catch-all of being able to help them navigate the different services that they might require and they might need. We have the ability also, because we're based on peer support and grassroots, that we are able to create that safe space for people to talk about the things that are happening, where they need supports, where the advocacy pieces need to happen, things like transit services or understanding different things. One of the things that we did at SEPA that nobody else in Southern Alberta does is we provided workshops. We provided workshops around knowing your rights, healthy relationships, living in community as well. One of the key pieces that I've taken away from some of the support letters that we've received is that nobody in this person's life was ever able to explain to them what a healthy relationship looked like. So there's a lot of opportunity for the peer support, the education piece as well, that doesn't happen in, your regular day programs or anything like that. The service navigation as well. Navigating services in any regard around disability services or income support or things like that, it's not easy. It's very complicated. It's very confusing. And for those of us that do it every day, it's still confusing. So for people who don't do it all the time, having that support to do that and working with families and, just also having the opportunity to work with individuals around educating the community about what supporting them looks like. A lot of people have no idea about proper supports and proper education and, where those pieces fit in. And so that's where the self-advocacy groups come into play. And the agencies like us and the Disability Action Hall and the Self-Advocacy Federation, we're very, very tiny organizations. We had 4 staff, which was larger than the staffing that had been previously as well. And we served from the BC border all the way to the Saskatchewan border. So, we weren't just in Lethbridge, we worked in the Crowsnest Pass, Medicine Hat, Tabor, and Brooks a lot. So it's a big, huge area for what we were essentially costing the government, right? And, we're very grateful for the years of consistent funding that we had from the government, because it allowed us to do what we needed to do and get creative with how we did self-advocacy by providing that consistent funding. around, operational dollars are not easy to find when it comes to grants and things like that because they're very project based. So, it's not just as easy as to, now that we don't have that funding to find consistently, ten to $16,000 a month to operate. And so it was a very heartbreaking time and very hard decision that we had to make as an agency in order and deciding to close our doors. It was many hours of scouring of different places for funding and different decisions on how we would exist in the space without that funding. And unfortunately, it was decided that we would have to close our doors. So
I got another question that I want to tack on the tail end of all of that, but I want to make sure I give space for Mary too. Is there anything that you want to add to what's been said here already, Mary?
Yeah, just even with Calgary, I mean, with the disability action hall, we only have one employee with the disability action hall. The rest of us get honorariums when we do work outside of the meetings and that. But that's a lot of work and what one person has done. And it's also a lot of work what the hall members have done and self-advocacy and Sarsan has done. And I felt like it was really disrespectful when they cut the funding prematurely. And that made people feel like they were not human. Their voices were being silenced and all that. And it kind of also left room for abuse to happen too.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Thank you for that. That sort of pivots into there's two other big pieces with the defunding of the advocacy groups that I want to make sure that I hit on. And one of them is, and I feel like he said cautiously, I already know the answer to this, but how much consultation did the government do with any of your organizations? And already the heads are shaking.
Zero.
Yeah.
Zippo.
Yeah. Is there?
Is anybody aware of any consultation that was done before they pulled the plug on all these programs?
So
No.
they didn't even consult the advisory group that is literally there for them to consult with, which is the Premier's Council on the Status of Persons with Disabilities. It was a surprise to them. So no, there was no consultation. Except maybe with themselves. That's about it.
Well, that's how it usually works with them. It seems.
I think an important point to talk about as well is the fact that especially within like the budget talks and when we were looking at question period and stuff was that and like any of the responses to any of the media interviews that we've done is that it's been said that there's like no direct services have been cut, but there's been no explanation from their side as to what their definition of direct service is. I mean, we were contracted to do like 26 workshops over a span of 3 years. And I mean, we've completed 62 workshops. We've had over 800 contacts with our members and members of the public and as of the community, so as far as my takeaway from that is that there's been no defining piece as to what their definition of direct service is compared to what our definition of direct service is. There's no duplication of services either, which is always a big thing when you look at funding dollars from the government as well, because they're always looking to cut or to make sure that there's no duplication of services. But I think there's been a lot of confusion around what exactly is their definition of direct service. So
I'm curious, and I'll throw this out to all of you as well. One of the things that we've seen with this government when it comes to sort of the grassroots frontline organizations that aren't under their direct control is when we take a look at the areas of like substance abuse and harm reduction, the government has been very, very clear that they want to have full command and control over how those services are delivered and what services are delivered. And if you're doing something that does not perfectly align with their ideological view of how that should be done, then they don't want to give you money. They've done that in the harm reduction space. They've done that in LGBTQ2S plus supports, and they're doing it in the disabled community as well. I'm curious, do you feel like that's part of the motivation for pulling this funding for them to just be able to have all of that consolidated control?
In a way, I feel like yes. Because if I look at the caregivers program that Center for Sexuality offers, that was created with in partnership with the Disability Action Hall, and they teach people about healthy relationships and all that stuff. But if that didn't exist, no one with a disability would know how to have a healthy relationship.
Okay. Mike, any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I definitely think that it is in part. Um, I think that they hear the word advocacy and they immediately think, oh, we don't want that. We don't want to fund advocacy. But I think what they don't understand is health advocacy is actually a term that was coined by people with disabilities in order for them to say, we don't want our parents or guardians to advocate for us. We want to be the advocates. So it essentially is saying it's essentially a way for people to be able to advocate for themselves. It's not necessarily saying we're against the government and we want to cause chaos. We want to work with the government, and we've done that for almost 30 years. So I don't know. I think they again they didn't do any consultation, so obviously they don't understand what we actually do and how we actually help people.
Kavin, anything you want to add?
Mike covered most of it, but yeah, nothing else.
All right, Leah, I'll end with you, and then I've got my other little note that I've made here.
I think it's, like Mike said, they don't, it seems like they don't understand what self-advocates do, or they don't care. I've been in the disability field and in this role and with SEPA for 2 years, so I haven't had a lot of historical background with it, but from what I know and what I've seen, it's, there's been so many positive changes and strides forward made over the last 30 years. And with everything that's happening right now, it feels like we're going back in time. We're going back to not having voices being able to be heard. They're dismantling positive, safe places for people to have that support without any regard for how that is going to affect people within the disability community, people who rely on their peers and who don't get the opportunity, say, to get together with friends and their peers, except for, when we have SARSAN meetings, because somebody lives in the Crowsnest Pass and somebody lives in Medicine Hat. It's taking away that opportunity for peer support, that community building and relationship building. And that's where the strength comes in too, is the community and the relationship building. And I'm hoping that, and the message that I've been sending to all of my members is that, just because SEPA and SARSAN stores are closed, that doesn't mean that self-advocacy is not going to happen anymore. It just means that it might look a little different, and it's up to everybody who considers themselves a self-advocate to rally together and to keep pushing forward.
Can I just add one thing to that, Nate?
100%.
So yeah, Leah, I 1,000% agree with you, and I think that's one thing that I've I've said as well to people is, if I've learned anything over the last 10 years of being a disability advocate, it's that people with disabilities are resilient. And we have learned so many things through health advocacy over the last 30 years. Um, we're not going backwards because we've been given a voice, we've been given a platform, we've been given tools to speak up for ourselves. So this is not the end, it's a stumbling block, but it's not the end.
I want to explore that a little bit because it seems to me that I mean, obviously, I love and respect the hell out of the fact that you're like, oh no, this is just a stumbling block. But I think it's important to highlight that this is an unnecessary stumbling block because, one of the things that I have in the many conversations that we've had over the years with members of the disabled community on the show, one of the things that I've been struck by is the passion and the drive that exists to make sure that the voices are heard. But I think it's also really important to highlight that's not easy. I mean, for Joe Average on a Joe Average day, speaking up for yourself, a lot of people really, really struggle with that. And I would, if I'm sounding paternalistic here, you can 100% call me out on it. But I would imagine that even just having people make the space for members of the disabled community to be able to express their voices, that's it feels like maybe that would be more work than for a, a loud idiot like me, because I'm a loud idiot. So I'm wondering if you can talk about that as well, because it seems to me that there's a subtext to this that I think is important to flesh out, because the subtext for what the government seems to be saying is A, with the lack of consultation for any of these decisions, and B, with the defunding of all of these organizations is, yeah, you know what, your voice doesn't actually matter to us all that much. So I'm wondering if you can each speak to that, and I'll go to Mary first. But like, am I completely off base? And if I've gotten anything wrong, Mary, by all means, please say, "Wow, Nate, you really crapped the bed on that one."
No, I think you got it pretty right. I think that they're trying to tell us to stay silent and that our voices don't matter, but in reality, our voices do matter, and we should have the option of not being silent, being loud. And I encourage people to be loud.
100%. Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to say as well, you're 1,000% right, Nate. Absolutely. I just, there's been a lot of grief in the disability community, and I guess I just don't want people to think, oh, this is it. Oh, my voice is silenced, and now I have no voice, and now I have no platform. But you are absolutely right that having other people around you and surrounding yourself with other people who, you know, agree and have the same kind of message, it makes your voice louder. 1,000%. And yes, this is absolutely unnecessary. I just don't want I don't want the disability community to feel like we're being put back in institutions. I guess if I'm totally honest, that's where my brain goes. And I'm like, we're not going backwards because we have moved forward because of self advocacy.
Yeah. And I want to say before I go to Leah and Kavin, um, one of the things that I find so striking about the people who are doing advocacy inside of the and outside of the disabled community, y'all don't quit. Like, it's really, really remarkable. And that was one of the when we had our little blackout period, that was one of the really frustrating things because we were working on setting up this conversation, and then we had our little blackout period. The emails didn't stop at any point. The advocacy groups that you guys are part of were very much like, okay, so when you're back, we're getting back on this, right? And so I think that's really like that's awesome, and it was very much appreciated. So I love the perseverance and the persistence, and I think it's so huge. Kavin, what are your thoughts?
Uh, yes. Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, they're really trying to make us again be quiet, to shut up. and this is not right. And we have a right to speak up for ourselves and others in the disability community. I feel like they just think some people might not in the disability community don't have the capacity to speak up. So if they defund these advocacy groups, that the government won't have to bother hearing that much issues that the disability community are going through. But no, there's lots of other disabled people like myself, Mike, Mary, who are able to speak up.
And I think it's important, if I may, I think it's important to highlight as well. Um, Communication is a two-way street. So if you're not hearing a disabled person's message or any person's message, that's not necessarily a function of just how they're communicating. It's also a function of how you're choosing to listen and engage with that process. And it certainly seems to send a strong message that the government is like, la 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 la. So I think that there's some very real responsibility that people who are not hearing things have to take for not hearing them. But Leah, I'll
And I was going to comment, usually when, as a person with disabilities, usually when I try to communicate with anyone or politicians, I CC, let's say, the opposition, like when I emailed Jason Nixon recently about the recent announcement of ADAP. I CC'd Marie Renault, the MLA of St. Albert, who's also the critic for community seniors and social services, because they could claim, this didn't come to us, but then I have proof. Someone who I CC'd will, in the opposition will say, no, she sent it to you guys.
Mary threw her hand up, so I want to go back to Mary, and then we'll bring it to Leah.
I also wanted to mention too what the advocacy groups, all of them, have been doing doesn't just affect the disability community, it affects other communities as well that have been marginalized. For example, with the low income bus pass here in Calgary, the Disability Action Hall advocated for it, and without them, it may not exist for people with low incomes, people who are new to Canada, or who are in between employment at this time.
Okay, Leah,
Uh,
any big thoughts on the broad topic of that?
I just want to clarify, like when I said like we're going backwards, I meant with the support from the government and the funding and that kind of stuff. In no way are self advocates going backwards. I'm humbled every day that I work with everyone about the resilience and how they're just like, no, you're not shutting us up, and like I'm speaking from a place of privilege in that I don't have a disability, but it's been a privilege to work with all of the individuals that we've worked with. And I think the government didn't expect the backlash as well. I think they thought that this would happen and everybody would just kind of roll over in silence. But I think they woke a sleeping giant as well. And we have people like Mary and Kavin and Mike and other members in Southern Alberta that are ready and willing to be loud and to, have those hard discussions and hard conversations with the government. And, like over the years, there's been that back and forth and that there's been those consultations. And I mean, we've gotten zero feedback from the government or from the disability advocate. None of our emails I've never gotten an email back or a conversation had from any of those. So it's really important to, for all the self advocates to know that they are still and continue to do an amazing job. and supporting each other. And, you know, like they're not going backwards, but the government is going backwards in their understanding of things and the way that they're willing to support our marginalized communities and our vulnerable communities.
Now, Mike, you touched on something a minute ago that I want to make sure that we hit on. You talked about the ADAP program. Can you explain? I got to ask you to do all the heavy lifting here, but can you explain what the ADAP program is, what are the changes, what are the effects? It's all yours.
Well, I'll tell you what I know. The ADAP is the Alberta Disability Assistance Program, and essentially the government came out with it. Minister Nixon held a press conference, I believe it was last month. And basically, what they claim it will do is it will increase the income threshold that people can make, people with disabilities can make when at their job. So for those that don't know, AISH, which is a assured income for the severely handicapped, there is a cutoff of how much you can earn while also receiving your AISH. And the ADAP program apparently is supposed to increase that threshold and allow people with disabilities to take home more of their monthly income from the job.
Okay.
But the problem with that is, you know, why didn't they just fix AISH? All they had to do was increase that income threshold on AISH. So to us it sounds like they're planning to reduce the monthly benefit. So AISH right now is $1,902, I believe that's right. So our belief is they're actually gonna lower that benefit. So it's actually going to create more problems than it's gonna solve.
Okay. And so, like, I want to just, if I can paraphrase that a little bit, just so that our audience really gets it. One of the problems that has been voiced about AISH many times is that if somebody is on AISH, but they're also able to work, as they work, that decreases their AISH benefits. So there's like a built-in mechanism where you can get ahead a little bit, but not too much. And that's not great for a whole list of reasons. This ADAP program will set that threshold for how far you can maybe get ahead a little bit higher. But as you said, the concerns that exist within the disabled community are that's going to decrease the amount of money that is paid as the base benefit. And one thing that I think, you know, we've been talking about AISH on this show for 6 years, intermittently. It's not every episode. But one of the things that has struck me is every time I have one of these conversations, we go back and we take a look at, oh, no, yeah, no, AISH is still well below the poverty line. The reality is you get roughly $22,800 on AISH. The poverty line in Alberta currently for an individual is $28,954. So it's still not like I don't know how Alberta likes to do that whole, oh, well, we pay the most out of any province. Well, we're one of the more expensive provinces to live in, and what we pay is still well below the poverty line. So I'm not sure that you get to take a victory lap on that one. Um, Mary, you got your hand up looking like you want to say something about the ADAP program as well.
Yeah, the way it's worded, it's not really clear, like what the ADAP program expects people to do, and if they have the option of being in the ADAP program or they're being told they have to be in the ADAP program, which is making people stressed out.
Okay.
And they're not given the option of using their family doctor as the person that refers them into the program.
That sounds not great. Leah, you got your hand up as well now.
So I think, you know, one of the things that is the biggest issue right now with this ADAP program is when they rolled it out, there was not enough information. It was very vague. It was very concerning that they were going to, they're rolling out this program, but it's not going to be into effect until next year. But here's some, highlights. Here's the highlight reel of the things. And not having any explanations as to who, what, when, where, why. But it's very typical of government to do things like that. In my experience coming from the housing world and harm reduction, they, instead of taking an already existing program and putting the resources into it to increase the capacity, increase the functionality of it, they come out with this shiny new thing that isn't always the best thing. And not having, and I've many conversations around like, well, am I going to get kicked off AISH now? But what about the fact that, like, due to my disability, I have good days or good weeks where I can work 4 days, but then, because I'm feeling good, I can work those 4 days, but then the next week I don't feel good and I can only work 2 days. There's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misunderstandings and not a lot of clarity. And that's also causing a huge problem and huge fear amongst people who are on AISH because it's so unknown. And, like, instead of rolling something out without the explanations of things, like, don't say anything at all until you have all your ducks in a row and all the explanations. And so people are understanding and being on some of the town halls that we've been on and hearing the fear that people have about not being able to pay for their bills or becoming homeless, it's heartbreaking. And there's no reason that it has to be that way. Just be transparent about stuff and yeah, it's very, like, I'm frustrated for everybody around that.
Mike, you got your hand up next. You guys are
Yeah,
crushing
Leah touched on something that I really wanted to bring up on this topic. They're putting the cart before the horse. Alberta is the only province that doesn't have an accessibility legislation. We also haven't broken down any of the systemic barriers that affect people and prevent people from being able to find employment. Leah mentioned a couple of them, which is chronic illness, chronic fatigue, all of these different things that might impact how much or how long you're able to work. So you're going to bring in this new program before you break down any barriers. What is that going to do? You're going to throw people onto this program, some of whom aren't going to be able to find work, so they're going to end up in more poverty than they're already in, and then that's going to increase the homeless population. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. And I think that's a really important, like, I'm really glad that you highlighted that because, and I'm going to Kavin's raised her hand, so is Mary. But I feel like he said cautiously, if I was to ask the question, how much consultation went on within the broad disabled community and within all of these grassroots frontline groups in regards to rolling out this ADAP program, I suspect I already know what the answer is going to be based on all of your reactions. But I'll throw it to Kavin here.
Yeah, so again, this ADAP program, concerned how it will be like for me personally, my health issues come and go. I'm sometimes fine and sometimes not fine, where I have to stay home. But anyways, if they want disabled people to work, then they should be the ones to help us get the job. Now the job market is, if you see, it's hard to find jobs out there. And some of you folks that know me, including Mike and Mary, as I always say, the jobs are being taken away, all thanks to this rise in technology such as AI, and also with volunteers. You have like companies that have lots of money, they seem to rely on volunteers still while they can hire people. But really, yeah, I don't know. People with disabilities, I just hope they won't get taken off AISH or and then not be able to find a job and then stay home. And this, I'm thinking this will increase or cause mental health problems if and where people with disabilities might even consider maid medical assistance in dying.
Mary, you got your hand up too.
I think they also don't realize that when people earn a lot of income, like if they live in subsidized housing, for example, their rent goes up. So, like, they haven't really addressed that issue that, you're trying to get ahead, but there's other systems within the government that are holding you back. And particularly with Calgary, too, aside from rent going up for subsidized housing, the cost of the low-income bus pass also goes up. And they don't take that into account. So you may be getting ahead in one side of your life, but you're being clawed back and penalized in the other side of your life.
Oh, you opened the door for me there. You did, Mary. So I'm going to walk right through it. Before I do, I just want to say, like, the one thing that I'm taking away from what everybody's saying here is this ADAP program could have the potential to do good things if it's structured properly, but more than anything, because of the way that it's been rolled out and the lack of information, it's created more anxiety for the people that it's supposed to be serving than anything. But Mary opened the door, so I'm going to just dance right through it. Um, let's talk about the recent announcement with the Canada Disability benefit, talking about clawbacks, because one of the things that was announced a while ago was that the government of Canada was going to be providing a little bit of a boost for folks who are living with disabilities. And if I'm getting it right, it's a $200 a month payment that was going to be made to supplement what people are already getting for supports. And I remember at the time that it was announced, there were a lot of people in the disabled community who were like, are we going to get screwed with this? Are they going to claw it back? Are they going to claw it back? And the big Nixon, he's very tall. He did sort of like a, oh no, we would never do anything like that response. And it turns out, yes, they would. Because it was recently announced that they will be clawing it back. So much like the more that you earn if you work on AISH, the more they take away. The government of Canada, it doesn't cost the province anything. The government of Canada is saying we're going to give disabled folks an extra $200 a month to try to get ahead because again, below the poverty line, and the province of Alberta has said, oh, we'd like that money instead. Thank you. So, Mike, I'm going to go to you first. How much of that did I get right? How much of that did I get wrong? And what are your thoughts?
Well, you got all of it right, but I do need to go back really quick to what you were saying about the consultations about the ADAP program. So I actually attended the budget estimates meeting with senior community and social services two weeks ago. And Minister Nixon did actually come out with a list of the people that he consulted with. I don't have that list, but I do know that he claimed he consulted with a bunch of people, including the Premier Council on the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Now, the problem with the Premier Council is that he might have consulted with them, but they don't have the opportunity to turn around and come to us and say, okay, well, here's what's going on. What do you folks think about it? So basically, he handed them this amazing looking roast dinner and they gobbled it down and said, oh, that's really yummy, instead of, actually making sure that it doesn't have poison in it, essentially. But about the clawbacks to the CDB, yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm not totally surprised that this government decided to do that. It doesn't make sense to me, and I saw somebody mentioned online that what if they force people who are eligible for the disability tax credit, what if they force people to apply for it even if they are on age? But it doesn't make sense. Why would you force people to apply for something and then just call it back? You know? So yeah.
Kavin, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment about the CDB, yeah, the Canada Disability Benefit. So, yeah, $200 is the amount that they said they would give to Canadians with disabilities. But that amount, I would say, is insufficient. Plus, those who live in subsidized housing, like me, 30% of that amount will go towards rent. There needs to be even rent caps in Alberta. And the $200, again, I did say yeah, it's insufficient, but it can help at least with, let's say, a little bit, let's say, with high grocery prices. With other, won't help with other things, let's say, but with grocery prices going high, it could help us. So this $200 shouldn't be clawed back from the AISH or income support benefits that Albertans receive monthly.
Mary, you threw your hand up as well.
I was just going to say it didn't surprise me that they would claw it back because they already claw back the CPP disability, and I don't think that one should be clawed back either.
I got to take a sec to highlight. I'm going to get Leah's thoughts as well. But I got to take a sec to highlight, like, of the three of you here, I have gotten nothing but not surprised that they're doing this. And I think that, there's a lot of things that we can say that are very, very telling about how the current provincial government is choosing to engage or not with members of the disabled community. But the fact that all y'all are like, yeah, doesn't shock me that they screwed us. That's pretty telling in and of itself. And like, that's another place where I now I'm gonna go. So I apologize. But like, here's the two things for me. If you do not have the trust of the people that you were claiming to serve, then what are you even doing? And secondary to that, there's this gross misconception that exists that if you allow, and for the audio listeners, I'm air quoting the hell out of that. If you allow people who are dealing with adversity, dealing with hardship, dealing with disabilities, all of the things, if you allow them to dare to get maybe just a little bit of an extra step up, all of a sudden they're gonna turn into freeloaders and they're not gonna want anything more for their lives, and they're just like, that is such a cynical and craven and false view of the world. And especially given that all of the evidence is the more supports that you allow people, the less it costs you in the long run because they don't have to access emergency services with the same frequencies. So it's so bonkers to me that this is the path that the provincial government has chosen to take, especially, and it is heartbreaking for me to be having this conversation today, and for all of you to be going like, oh yeah, they totally screwed us, we expected it. Like, that's, if there's any indictment on this government that we've talked about today, that's it for me. Like, if you don't have the faith of the people that are relying, again, air quoting, uh on you to go about their day, then like, that's not great. But as I was working my way through my rant there, a bunch more hands went up. So I'll go back to Mike, and I promise I'll get back to you, Leah.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to say, yeah, no, absolutely. The fact that they would do this, is just horrific to me. Actually, can you go to Kavin and then come back to me? I forgot what I was gonna say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, for sure. Kavin, you're all up.
Uh, Going back to the CDB, yeah, I just want to comment saying that all Canadians with disabilities who are receiving even provincial disability benefits won't be eligible. Their eligibility, they said, is for those who have the DTC disability tax credit, but again, not everyone in Canada even qualifies for that. It's not fair. They're making life really stressful for all Canadians with disabilities, on top of what they're already stressed with, I would say.
And I think that goes back to what Mike was talking about with the reducing the barriers. It's great to have the intention of rolling out programs. So yeah, I'm taking a shot at the federal government now, I guess. It's great to have the intention to roll out programs, but if you're not reducing barriers of access to those programs, then what are you even doing? Did you want to come back in there, Mike?
Yes, I do. Hilly. What I wanted to add is, you know, like you said, there's this idea that we're gonna be freeloaders and all of this stuff. But what they don't seem to realize is people with disabilities, if we have money that, you know, we're able to pay our bills and pay our rent, pay all these things, that's great. But if we have that tiny little bit of extra money to get us ahead, do you know what we're going to do with that money? We're going to put it back into the economy. I don't, maybe they think we just sit on our couch all day and eat Cheetos. I don't know, but we don't. We want to be looking, we want to do it in the community, we want to travel, we want to do all of these things, but we can't because we're in legislative poverty.
Ooh, I love that
Yeah,
term.
I had the word, I know.
I love that term. Oh, I'm writing that one. Legislated poverty. That is fantastic. Mary, you threw your hand up again.
Yeah. I wanted to say too, I don't think it's fair that seniors with disabilities don't get this CDB. I mean, my dad, he's worked for 30 years of his life. He has a disability. He should be able to enjoy the little extra money that he gets from the government, just like the rest of us are able to do. But he can't just because he's too old.
Gotcha. Here's a question for all of you. Um, well, actually, before I ask my big question, I want to go back to Leah because it was just so busy for a second there. Is there anything that you'd like to add, Leah, about the Canadian disability benefit?
Oh, good. This has been a great conversation. So they've said all the things that I've been wanting to say as well too. But I think to wrap it up, like, like you said, like the fact that everyone was expecting to get screwed and there was no surprise there just shows the absolute untrust, the lack of trust that there is with our government right now. And it's a shame. It's shameful. Like it's shameful for the government to be in that place with the people that they're supposed to be supporting and serving, and the people that I know and that I work with, they work their butts off, you know, for what, $200 extra, right? Like for $200, for some people that's going to make all the difference to be able to pay for medications or, to maybe go to a movie with a friend, because when you're in legislative poverty, your money is budgeted to the dime. I'd say pennies, but we don't have pennies anymore, but but and it's like, how stressful is that? And when we have elected officials that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing and serving and supporting our most vulnerable in our communities, and when there's such a distrust and like, oh yeah, what are we gonna get screwed on next? It's really sad. It's really sad. And with the ADAP program, again, like touching on what Mike said, the fact that Alberta doesn't have a legislative or an accessibility act, where's the the I can't think of the word, like what's going to hold employers accountable, right? There's nothing in place to hold employers accountable to make sure that those individuals who are, going to be slotted for the ADAP program are going to actually be able to find work that is going to be able to accommodate their disability. And, some of the people that I've worked with are some of the hardest workers that I have ever worked with. And, it's so fair to them that just a tiny little step up, and like Kavin said, it's still inadequate, gets clawed back, and there's nothing in place to protect them.
Yeah. I want to just address like one thing that Mike said. I don't know that it was explicitly stated, so I want to explicitly state it. Um, there's nothing wrong with somebody on AISH going to a movie once a month. There's or like I'm not saying once a month is like that's the allied time frame. Like that's just the example I'm choosing to use. There's nothing wrong. Like for people to be out in the community and being able to, as Mike said, support the economy and all of the other things. There's nothing wrong with that. And to say to somebody, well, I don't think that you should go be able to, like, I don't know if there's any even good movies out there. So, like, go out for dinner or whatever. But to say to somebody that I think that you should be segregated away from society because those are my tax dollars is an incredibly short-sighted view. And it isolates people in ways that are demonstrably harmful. So for anybody who's listening to this, who's going like, well, I don't know if people on AISH should be getting so much money that they can go to a movie. Like, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Deal with it.
Okay.
There,
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Here's my question. Here's my question to your viewers. I'm sorry, Millie, I had to jump in. Would you rather your tax dollars be going to a premier to fly to another country to talk to a guy who thinks that our country is a joke? Would you rather that than it going to somebody um ensuring that their mental health stays intact by going to see a freaking movie?
Yeah. 100%. Could not agree with you more, Mike, and I'm glad that you brought up the mental health piece because the isolation piece is, when we've had conversations in the past with members of the disabled community, one of the big things that they keep coming back to is the isolation. And so, I mean, I could do another 15 minutes on the many benefits of having members of the disabled community out and about in the community. I'm not here to do the talking today, and I already did a rant, so I'm just going to shut that up. But I do have one other topic that I want to hit on, but Mary put her hand up, so I'm going to give it to Mary, and then I want to ask another question. So, Mary, go ahead.
I'm going to say having the money to be able to go to your regular grocery store or your Cineplex Odeon is very good to have. I mean, we have these programs like the Alex with their affordable market and Canyon Meadows, which we call here in Calgary the cheap movie theater, which are okay too. But they're also very isolating, like you said before, because they're taking you away from the rest of society. You have the right to be in society. You have the right to choose if you want to go to those cheap places or you want to go to your regular neighborhood stores and movie theaters. And the government should take that away. And they should also realize, too, election time is coming. And they want us to vote for them. So if you want us to vote for you, you should be treating us well, too.
Very well said. The last topic that I want to hit on with you folks, and I honestly, I deliberately didn't look up the answer to this because I wanted to hear from you. One of the underlying themes in this conversation has been sort of the idea of unintended consequences, sometimes intended consequences, but also unintended consequences. And one of the things that struck me with we've seen politicians, both the liberals and the conservatives, they've been talking about, oh yeah, the carbon tax, we're going to get rid of it. And the liberals have gotten rid of it. But here's my first question. Did people in Alberta on programs like AISH get the carbon tax rebate?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Okay. Second question, and this is the one that I didn't look up and I'm scared of. Um, did it get clawed back too?
No, it didn't.
You know,
Well, it wasn't.
yeah,
Okay.
you
So
did not.
when we're talking about the carbon tax rebate, I think it's really like it got demonized really, 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 really well. I had a conversation with somebody just yesterday, and they were like, "Well, I'm still trying to figure out why the carbon tax is so bad." I was like, "Well, there's a lot of arguments to be made. It wasn't actually as bad as a lot of people portrayed it, and in fact, the data supports that because 80% of all people with the rebates they got ahead. They got more money back than they spent in carbon tax. We've got the last carbon tax rebate is coming up in April, but for folks on AISH who again below the poverty line, that rebate probably was helpful. So I'd like to hear from everybody what their reactions are to losing that rebate and juxtapose that if you could with the um they didn't claw back the carbon tax rebate, but they are clawing back the targeted disability. Like it's just uh it's too much. I'm gonna go to Mary first with this one.
Actually, I'm one of the few that didn't get the carbon tax rebate
Oh,
because my taxes got messed up when I reported them.
oh, okay.
But I do think that it will affect people who are used to getting the carbon tax rebate, might make them choose to go a little closer to home to shop because they can't afford the gas in their car to pay to go to the shopping mall.
Okay. Kavin?
Uh, yeah, I'll just say it's gonna mentally affect people, especially those with disabilities, because of course they're losing the money that they used to get, and yeah, they probably like me. I was usually putting the extra money I was getting into my RDSP, and now, won't be able to put that extra money into the RDSP to save for my future. And if you're wondering, RDSP is Registered Disability Savings Plan.
You got ahead of me there. I was just going to ask you what an RDSP was for our audience. So thank you for doing that. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it will 100% affect people, and yes, why they didn't claw that back, but they're clawing the $200 back is gobsmacking. But I actually have a friend who's in a really bad situation, living situation, and they were using sorry, the carbon tax rebate as a way to save up to be able to move. They're also on age. Now they've stated like this is gonna impact how much they can put away so that they can actually get out of this bad living situation. So yeah, it's gonna impact a lot of people for sure.
Leah, you got anything to add to all that? No. Okay.
No, everybody's covered everything that I would have said.
Right? Like I love it. Okay, that's everything that I have on my list. We're getting close to the hour and a half mark. And I find that when we get to 2 hours, people tend to get a little bit drifty. So I want to just run the floor one more time. I want to give each one of you the opportunity uh, to share your thoughts, any other issues that you want people to be aware of, anything you want to talk about. If you want to talk about I don't know that maybe there's a good movie in the theaters that I don't know about that you want to recommend, whatever. What the floor is entirely yours, and I'll start with Mary first.
I'd probably be the last one to know what's good in theaters because my family watches more Filipino channels than Canadian stuff. Um, but I just wanted to say thank you for having us on here today.
Of course. Thank you for being patient with, and I'll say this preemptively to all of you. Thank you for being patient with the, and it sounds so dumb. I hate this part. I really, really do, because Thank you for being patient with the struggles that the show has been dealing with in the face of this conversation. Sounds so, it's embarrassing for me to say that, but thank you very much for to all of you for being willing to work with the scheduling challenges. Kavin, your final thoughts.
Anything that I have in my mind you should talk about next time with folks you're wondering?
Anything you want to say. If you want to do like, hey, I really like oranges, you can do that.
Mhm.
If you want to, if there's any topics that we haven't hit on, you can do that.
Me, I have lots of topics in my mind. I'll just maybe say the two most ones that I'm now focusing on personally. One is I'm contacting all levels of government and about my most recent experience as a person with disability. So my mother passed away October 7th, 2024, a couple months ago. And after she passed away, I've been taken advantage of by my family. Family members tried to gain access to my late mother's estates, and I bet other people with disabilities probably went through the same issues I've gone through, but are unable to speak up for themselves, or maybe another thing is sometimes they could be under guardian or trusteeship or whatever, and they only take the words of what the guardian says, and the guardian isn't even helpful to the person. And yeah, anyways, I want to some rules to in this province or all across Canada to be changed when it comes to wills and estates. I've written a long email to the Minister of Justice here in Alberta, Mickey Amry, who's also my MLA, and to Daniel Smith, and even to the Prime Minister about this. I did get a response. You wouldn't believe the response I received. It's a long one, but I won't read it now. Anyways, there should be some rules implemented to make sure the person, a rightful person, gets their inheritance, etc. And then another thing is going back to what I was saying earlier about employment. Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah, like I've started even a petition. If you want to see, I'm collecting names to uh, have the government implement policies to prioritize human paid labor over excessive use of technology and volunteers. Yeah, again, the rise in technology such as AI and like self-checkouts, whatever, I know has brought us significant improvements to various sectors. However, it's caused people to lose their paid jobs and to not get new job opportunities. Again, as a person with disabilities, I cannot find any jobs that suit my needs. So if I had to go on that ADAP, whatever program, I'm afraid how life will be for me. Yeah, and then volunteering too. Like volunteerism again is taking away jobs, and I'm not saying that volunteer jobs should completely stop, but those big corporations that have the money, they should still hire people at the same time because they have the money, or else they should be maybe charged certain fees or taxes for not hiring people and only using these free technologies and volunteers. Yeah, because we all deserve to earn a living to make ends meet in this country. Yeah, there's more I want to say, but I won't keep you all too long.
But I just wanted before I'm gonna go to Leah, and then I'm gonna give the last word to Mike. But I think you just said something really, really important there because, and I wanna take a sec to highlight it because the frustration that you're experiencing with not being able to find work was very real and it was very visible. And so to anybody who is trying to advance that, quite frankly, bullshit argument that, oh, they're just being lazy. Like, I would say, look at the frustration that Kavin just put out into the ether about not being able to find work and do those things. Um, and that's really important. I think people, thank you for sharing that because I think people really do need to see that. Um, Mary threw her hand up again, so I'll go back to Mary real quick and then I'll go to.
Yeah, Kevin, you brought up a good point too, and I kind of remember it a little bit. With the ADAP program, they didn't really explain to what happens if you get laid off from your work. Like the people at the Bay, do they get back, if they were a disabled person and they don't get severance pay and they're laid off, do they get put back on AISH automatically, or do they have to continue to struggle trying to find a job? It's not their fault they're laid off.
That's a really good point, Mary. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. Leah, final thoughts? Anything else you want to bubble up to the surface?
No, I just want to say thank you for, having the platform to be able to increase the awareness about the stuff that's had happening. We've been having some amazing town halls with Marie and her team, and just the being able to raise awareness about the stuff that's happening that shouldn't be happening. There's no, it confuses me all the time as to why our government continues to make life so much harder for people when it should be the opposite. So I'm glad you're back on the air, and I'm glad, I'm really thankful that we've been able to come on and talk about the issues that are happening, and so that you can hear from, because it's more important to hear about what's going on from these guys than it is from me. But I'm really appreciative of being able to be a part of the different self-advocacy groups that we've been a part of as well, with our provincial group, AACT, and having our SARSAN group as well. So it's not the end for by any means for a lot of things, and you know platforms like yours is what we need to get the message out and to bring that awareness as to, because unless you're in that disability community, a lot of times you don't know what's happening, and the regular everyday folks don't know what's going on in reality. And it's really important for everybody to understand those systematic barriers that have been put in place that are just getting harder and harder for everybody to navigate.
Yeah. Mike, last word, all yours.
Yeah. So first of all, Nate, I just want to say, it doesn't matter how long it takes to have us on the show. We're just happy that you were willing to, and happy that, you're taking the time to, talk about these issues and raise awareness about these issues. But one thing I wanted to say, is for the people that are listening to this, you might think that this doesn't affect you. You might think, oh, I don't have a disability. This doesn't impact me. This doesn't affect me. Why do I care about this? Disability is the fastest growing minority in Canada, in the world, and it can occur to anybody at any time in their life. And at some point in your life, you might need support. You might need employment support. You might need support from a disability advocacy organization. You might need the CDB. So don't think that this doesn't impact you, because it does. So it's really important that we talk about it. And I wanted to touch on something that Leah said as well. Now I totally forgot what that thought was. But basically, the the defunding of the disability advocacy group, it has such a wide-reaching effect on not just people in the disability community, but it has an effect on the government. It has an effect on all of the organizations that we partner with and that we work with to create change and to help make the world more accessible. And I wanted to add as well, that's what I wanted to say. Sorry, I was hoping it would come back to me as I kept talking. The UCP likes to talk about how the NDP is fear mongering and they're doing all this stuff and they're saying all these things. If you think they're fear mongering, then come and talk to us. Do your own town hall. I promise you, if you do a town hall, I will come to it. And I think Mary will, I think Leah will, I think Kavin will. So will many other people with disabilities. But you have to open that door and actually be willing to have that conversation. And finally, I just want to add, I actually, a little bit of self promo. I actually have my own TikTok, YouTube, Instagram channel called The Anti-Ablist. And I actually talked about the defunding of the disability advocacy group. Ended up getting like 45,000 views on that TikTok. So I know that there's people across Canada, not just in Alberta, who care about this issue. And I just want to say thank you to all those people who do care and who do want to help in any way they can.
That's awesome, man. I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to chat today. I want to thank you all so much for being willing to share all of your perspectives and to share all of your experiences, because I have no illusions that there's some vulnerability that exists in that. And to the show's audience, the thing that I would like to end with is, if the measure, as I started it out with, if the measure of any society is how they care for their vulnerable, as the UCP and the provincial government, and I want to be clear. I mean, the UCP are in charge. They've been in charge for 6 years, so they're wearing a lot of this. But it's not like the NDP absolutely knocked it out of the park when they were in government with the disability files, as it were. So, everybody sucks equally, I guess, which is not great. But if you're hearing anything that we've talked about today and your reaction is, well, that's not great, doing nothing includes you in how you treat the most vulnerable. It doesn't take much more than 5 minutes to fire off an email to your current MLA, to the Big Nixon, and including Marie Renault, because Kavin did a very good job of highlighting how important it is that you have those redundancies built in. It doesn't take very long to do that. Whether or not the government listens, that's not on you as the person writing the email. That's on them as the person receiving the email. And at the very least, if you fire off that email, then you get to include yourselves in the people who tried to say not on my watch. And that's critically, critically important. So I want to thank all of you so much for taking the time to chat today.
Nate, Hilly, I don't know if you're aware, but we also have the Disability Advocacy, the Disability Action Hall, and the Health Advocacy Federation. Both have donation campaigns. The Disability Action Hall is Light the Way through Canada Help, and the Health Advocacy Federation is Save the SAF through the GoFundMe. And if anybody at all can afford to donate or even share the campaigns, that would be amazing. I would greatly appreciate it.
Perfect. Do me a favor, send me the links for those. I'll make sure they get included in
Yes,
today's.
I believe Colleen, you don't have to add this, but I believe Colleen did send it to you. But I can send it again if you need.
Yeah, if you could. My email's a dumpster fire. Thank you all so much again for taking the time to chat today. And please keep us updated. And to all of you, don't ever hesitate to reach out. And because I feel like the disabled situation in Alberta is not going to be solved in the next 72 hours. So I would absolutely be incredibly grateful if we could have follow-up conversations in a couple of months.
Thanks
Yeah,
for having
absolutely.
us on. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
All
thanks for having us.
And that's it for another episode of The Breakdown. As always, if you appreciate the kind of content that we're trying to produce here, we would love nothing more than if you thought about signing up to be one of our Patreon sponsors at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab, where for just the price of a fancy cup of coffee a month, you can help us continue to produce this kind of content. Whether you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, in which case, maybe leave a review and a rating, or whether you're watching it on one of our streaming platforms, we want to say a big thank you to everybody who is part of the Breakdown's audience. And as always, take care of each other and keep the conversation going.